is May. No, it's June. Thank you. June 5, 2024. Is everybody wonderful? Is everybody wonderful? I hope so. If not, I hope that you're okay, for sure. And let me just say hello to some who have come in. Alicia and Analog and Sandra and Rage Against the Machine and Andrew Cruz and Agnes and Justin Wynn. Hello. Christy, Julie, and Angelos, Barb in Ohio, Agnes, hello. Louisiana Skywatch. Hope you all didn't have a rainy day. Yeah. Well, we didn't here in Arizona. Oracle 11, Ezra, Bread and Circus. Yeah. Dancing on the Titanic. Michael A. Wilson, Jay Northrup, Mark Anthony, Donna Davidson, Tom Tamata, and Wendy B. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm going to take a look at radar. There's a bit of a glitch tonight, as you can see. Ooh. Ah. Well, we don't see a couple of images. But what we do see down here in Mississippi and Alabama is not good. And you would think that right up here in Maryland, things are okay. But do you see these little supercells ignite in Maryland? Tornado warning for you. In Maryland. That's right. Part of Tornado Alley, I guess. Now, we've got the supercells igniting, of course, in Texas, which is pretty much the same area, but they seem to be traveling in a different direction. In a completely different direction than all other weather fronts. Tornado, you've got 3 up here, and you've got a tornado. Well, let me refresh. Maybe some have. Some have expired, but not the Maryland, Montgomery, Maryland tornado watch. Germantown, located over Germantown. And Baltimore, Harford, Maryland, over Perry Hall or near Middle River. You have one in Marion, Alabama, west of Hamilton, and another in Maryland and Arundel, Baltimore, and Howard. Isn't that interesting? You've got a lot of tornado warnings in Maryland. And that seems like it's natural. Right? Right. Yes, let's just say it's natural. All of this stuff happening, it's just happening without man's hand. I don't think so. I don't think so. Mama rages, hey. I know you said don't thank me, but I will, because that's what I just do. So thank you. Massive disaster strikes Taiwan. Landslide engulfs 100 cars, buries dozens alive. But the last I heard, no deaths.
A landslide occurred near Keeling City, Taiwan on June 3rd, 2024. The incident took place in the afternoon at the Baining Road entrance to Chaojing Park, a popular tourist destination. The landslide caused part of the hillside to collapse, burying several vehicles and injuring 4 people. Thankfully, no one was reported trapped.
I would really hit that gas pedal and get out of there. The link is in the chat should you want to watch the full video, should you want to subscribe to Undersphere. Overnight storms cause severe flooding in Oklahoma Metro. Yeah. When we get weather, we get severe weather now.
Yard, so they actually drove like
it really oh, to the younger generations, to those generations that don't know what we actually lived, baby boomers and Gen X's. We never had weather like this. Oh, it was rare, very rare. But you know what? We used to just have rain. It was rain, a rainy day. And sometimes, because we had so many sunny days, back to back, I loved the rainy days. It kind of was a relief. You know, you just kind of stayed at home, you read a book, whatever. Yeah, no longer. No longer. They don't know what we lived. And watching this horror film is very hard. Storm damage across Minnesota.
Finds a video here where you can see rain and wind just whipping through a neighborhood, taking a lot of debris with it. Rain kind of coming by in sheets at times, as you can see there. Then at the end of this, at the end of the video, you can see a tree topple over under the pressure of that wind. We sent our crews out to Circle Pines to just get a better look at that impact of the storms, especially after they rolled through. Our photojournalists captured trees blown onto houses, garages, and vehicles. We also found people that were out and about helping one another clean up. We spoke to one woman who was in her home when the storm hit.
It was just really, really loud. I heard a couple thunder strikes, and the third one that I heard, I thought was a thunder strike, was actually this tree coming down on these cars, and the fourth one I heard through the house. It was really loud and knocked over my kitchen chairs.
Wow, amazing. Check out this security camera footage out of Blaine. It's from a home, and it captured the moment. You can see on the right-hand part of your screen. Right there, a tree came crashing down in a neighborhood of some mobile homes. It just started with branches. Eventually, that whole tree came down. And pictures out of the Centennial Square community, which is on the border of Blaine and Circle Pines. That neighborhood saw significant damage, a lot of downed trees on top of vehicles there, too. A lot of debris out on the ground as well. So we know a lot of people will be cleaning up today. And don't forget, if you have pictures of storm damage, you can...
Look at this. Unbelievable. And look how sick is this tree. All of the fungal disease on this tree. Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you have the resources to take down trees that are close to your house, that could hit your house, I highly suggest you do it. Car submerged in water after flash flooding in Louisville, Kentucky.
Right now, live here at 5 o'clock, we are showing you a live picture from our photojournalist Elijah McKenzie. He's down at 7th and Berry in the south end of Louisville. We'll take a look around the Shively neighborhood. Serious flash flooding in parts of Kentuckiana being reported. We've had huge amount of rain, folks, come down within just the last hour.
We did not see this on a daily basis. Right? Right. So listen to this. They're still warning residents of the Corral fire that has been pretty much contained. But, okay, you got that wind, huh?
Just a slight shift in the wind is what residents here at Tracy Hills tell me makes all the difference between just a little bit of luck and total destruction. And as you can see, back on the hills here behind me, that's where the Corral fire happened. You can see how scorched the hills are. And if that fire would have jumped across the interstate into this community, these homeowners tell me they would have been sitting ducks with just one way out.
It worked in our favor this time. It might not the next time.
Secluded in the San Joaquin Valley, nestled between downtown Tracy and I-580, are 1,200 homes known as Tracy Hills. Stephanie Pino moved here with her family a couple years ago. Her first warning of wildfire risk after a vehicle went up in flames on the interstate that summer.
That was essentially our first instinct.
But nothing gripped her nerves quite like Saturday's Corral fire.
We were just constantly checking our windows to see where the fire would be at that point, because we just saw it kind of rolling down the hills. We just started to gather our things. It was very scary.
Kids started looking at the fire. The moment they saw the fire, they started crying.
This father Fox 40 spoke with, fearing for his family's lives if they were forced to evacuate on Saturday.
Where do you go? Please provide me what is the way out.
The way out of Tracy Hills is only one way. This narrow road tracing around the 1,000 or so homes.
Widening the roads, having a second exit, since we only have one single lane in and out of the neighborhood, that needs to be a priority.
Tracy Hills Drive feeds out to Corral Hollow Road, backed up Saturday with drivers forced to exit off Interstate 580. A trap for 6,000 residents if the fire jumped the interstate and burned through their community.
I feel like this was a huge wake-up call for everyone. If the winds were blowing in the opposite direction, this would have been a much different situation.
Pino and her neighbors reaching out to Tracy City Council members and their homeowners association to build a retaining wall to block the fire or connect this back road to feed into the city. But the developer says that could take months.
That is only available to emergency exits, and in fact, it's gated all the time.
Time they don't have, surrounded by fuel this early into wildfire season.
A fire needs to be lit under the to go ahead and get this going now.
And I reached.
I hope you all have a plan. I was thinking about that this morning. I don't. I mean, if a fire engulfed this area, I wouldn't know. You know, if the fire is behind me, then I could get out that way. But there's an awful lot. There are, I'm not saying that there's only one way out. There is only one way out to the main road, but there are other streets, you know, that you could turn on. It's very important to have all of that prepped before a happening. Germany declares state of emergency after flooding. This is bad. This is really bad. The amount of flooding that is going on in Germany. Alrighty, so Phoenix using ice immersion to treat heat stroke victims, as Southwest bakes in triple digits. So the last time I looked, it was 102 here, and I'm about an hour and a half away from Phoenix. So it was 102. And from what I gather from subscribers, the subscriber here and her daughter, is that this is nothing. I mean, they've had much hotter days here in Arizona the first week of June, but they sure are blowing this up big time. Heat. The heat stroke treatment has made ice and human-sized immersion bags standard equipment on all Phoenix Fire Department emergency vehicles. It is among measures the city adopted this year as temperatures and their human toll soar ever higher. So, and Phoenix will have 2 cooling stations open overnight. Oh, fabulous. All right, so I didn't know that a heat stroke victim, that you could literally just submerge them in ice. I would have thought that that would have been such a shock to the body that that might not be a good idea. I actually never heard of that. I would have thought that you would have had to bring down the temperature a little bit more slowly. Phoenix commonly reaches 120 every summer. Well, I'm not sure about 120, but throughout the years, I've seen 118, 118, 118 over and over and over again. 2 degrees, not much of a difference. But, well, they're also talking about fires, right? So, I showed you a couple of captures, or a video that I've taken of the black carbon dust in this area. Here, this was after the live last night. Black carbon dust rolling off a vertical, well, not rolling off, but emitted from a vertical cloud. So if you watch the Rumble video that I linked to last night on artificial heat waves, black carbon dust is a very cheap substance to spray into the atmosphere to create these heat waves. That's bookend. Bookend. He's turned out to be quite the sweetie. So, look at this. Look at the amount of lithium and all of the other aluminum and barium, strontium, and, you know, black carbon dust. Does that look like Mother Nature? Does that look like a natural cloud? There is a paper, can't remember what it's called. It's in the video on artificial heat waves and all several methods in which they can use to create it. They talk about the manufacturing of artificial clouds, the horizontal clouds for emitting the black carbon dust. That's just what you saw. So, World hits streak of record temperatures as the United Nations warns of climate hell. Well, we're already living climate hell, but we know why we're living it. And here, they can't help but laugh. Mainstream media in Britain. Listen to this. The Met Office. Listen to this.
Well, guys, it seems the gaslighting and outright lies from the climate con cult is getting too much for even the talking heads. You know, the ones who are forced to parrot their tripe to an ever-skeptical view in public. This, for those who don't know, involves a Sky News trout fighting back uncontrollable laughter as she tells us this has been the hottest May and spring in over 130 years.
We can bring you. Now, you may have thought that it's been a pretty miserable spring and summer so far, but according to the Met Office, the UK had its warmest May and spring in records dating back as far as 1884. So it's been the warmest May and the warmest spring since 1884, according to the Met Office. I guess they're not taking into account the rain.
Now, I've got to say, I laughed so hard when I see her chuckle as she read that out, because I know subconsciously she couldn't help but laugh at how stupid the claim is. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you why it's bullshit, because you all live in the real world and can obviously feel it for yourself. But it does show how desperate the climate con artists are to push this tripe that even the paid-for puppies can't keep a straight face when they pump it out, because they know the public
ain't fucking buying that.
Now, I've had conversations with a subscriber who lives in Britain. She's been telling me that it hasn't been wickedly hot, the warmest May in 130 years, whatever. Oh my God. In fact, she was telling me that cloud coverage every day. Doesn't matter where she lives in Britain. Britain's the land mass is tiny. I mean, we could fit probably 4 Britons in Texas. I maybe 5 if you squeezed it in. Unbelievable. I don't know how we got so low. Florida officials say the property insurance market is better, but homeowners are still frustrated. That's right. The economy is just wonderful, but Americans are just negative, and that's essentially what Biden said.
And for Saunders, standing in front of the state capitol, is the beleaguered property insurance market here in the Sunshine State ready for what some call a hyperactive hurricane season? We talked to some of the state officials to find out.
This year, it went up another 97% to 14,700.
That's Debbie Winter, one of many Floridians whose property insurance premiums continue blowing up as a potentially powerful hurricane season blows this way.
We're, to the point where we're on fixed income. And, what do you do between all the other bills that pile up on top of this?
But as homeowners pinch pennies, Florida's top insurance officials are trying to ease concerns, saying the
over 14,000 for home insurance. I guess that's why people are frustrated. With the good news that the insurance is coming down in Florida, toxic biosolids threaten U.S. farmland and livestock. Here we go. It's just another toxin in the environment. But so what? Biosolids derived from sewage sludge have contaminated farmland and livestock with harmful chemicals, including those forever chemicals, the PFAS. The EPA has historically promoted biosolids as safe, despite evidence of widespread chemical contamination. You think your federal agencies work for you? Americans, stop being, it's your stupidity is it really is just getting on my nerves. And boy, you flaunt it. So Congress is considering allocating $500 million to compensate farmers affected by the use of toxic biosolids. Okay, so if Congress is considering, don't think that they're going to allocate $500 million to compensate farmers. But that seems like it really is quite toxic. Don't you think? Two more Boeing whistleblowers go public over plane safety. Like a ticking time bomb. Okay, Boeing was one of the top companies, corporations. So they are bringing Boeing down, or Boeing is bringing itself down. Why are we only hearing about Boeing? So it's like a ticking time bomb. Despite the deaths of 2 whistleblowers within 2 months this year, there are more determined, former employees are more determined than ever to tell the truth about what they allege are dangerous practices at the once great but now scandal-scarred manufacturer. All right, why hasn't the FAA brought Boeing to a halt? A lot of airlines use Boeing. You got to really kind of check out if you're somebody that flies. Check out if you're flying a Boeing. So I've played this many times over the years, not this one particular excerpt from Twitter, but it's worthy of a listen. Again, aerosolized nanomatter for weaponized means.
We can even go further. One of the newest developments is that nanoparticulate matter can be stabilized for distribution. If you're not aware of what nanoparticulate matter is, it's that matter which exists on a scale of 1 × 10⁻⁹. Very, very small. Smaller than a cell. And we can manufacture materials that have discrete properties that can be controlled by virtue of bioengineering and their physical chemistry. To auto-aggregate, to be able to aggregate in particular areas based upon their biological and or chemical sensitivity. But now we go one step further. Most recently, just a few weeks ago, it was announced that you could then aerosolize nanomaterials. And go one step further, I can create small robotic units, controllable robotic units at the nanoscale, and that these too can be aerosolized to create a nanoswarm of biopenetrable materials that you cannot see, that can penetrate all but the most robust biochemical filters, that are able to integrate themselves through a variety of membranes, mucous membranes, and wherever, mouth, nose, ears, eyes, can be then uptaken into the vascular system to create clumping, can affect the vascular system of the brain, or can directly diffuse into the brain space, and these can be weaponized. And they can be done in such a level that their presence is almost impossible to detect, and as such, the attribution becomes exceedingly difficult to demonstrate. How much of this material would I need?
Just a reminder, aerosolized nanoparticulates. How many of us have them in our brains? We're seeing a lot of crazy behavior. So this was sent to me by a subscriber. I've posted videos on bioweapons, the use of bioweapons by the United States. This is just one. A lot of you know about it. In the 1950s, the U.S. released a bioweapon in San Francisco. It was a bacteria that had a flashy red appearance, a flashy microbe, making it useful in experiments because it's so bright and easy to see. Bacterium, which is right here, lives in soil and water, best known for its ability to produce this bright red pigment. Well, beginning on September 26, 1950, the crew of a U.S. Navy minesweeper ship spent 6 days spraying this bacterium into the air about 2 miles off the northern California coast. The project was called Operation Sea Spray, and its aim was to determine the susceptibility of a big city like San Francisco to a bioweapon attack by terrorists. In the following days, the military took samples at 43 sites to track the bacteria spread and found that it had quickly infested not only the city but surrounding suburbs as well. During the test, residents of these areas would have inhaled millions of bacterial spores. Clearly, their test showed San Francisco and cities with smaller size and topography could face germ warfare threats. You had to do that to figure out if they would face germ warfare threats. I'm not an expert, but I would think that you're spraying something into the atmosphere and the winds are coming inland, that would affect what's inland. Okay, but what am I? I mean, really? There was a catch. At the time, the U.S. military thought that this particular bacteria couldn't harm humans. That changed when 1 week after the test, 11 local residents checked into Stanford University Hospital complaining of urinary tract infections. Upon testing their pee, doctors noticed that the pathogen had a red hue. After scientists identified the microbe, the cases collectively became the first recorded outbreak of this bacteria. One patient, a man named Edward Nevin, who was recovering from prostate surgery, died, and some have suggested that the release forever changed the area's microbial ecology. The military had performed similar tests in other cities across the country over the next 2 decades until Richard Nixon halted all germ warfare research in 1969. Bullshit! Okay, we know that it continued. So, speaking of biowarfare, World Health Organization warns a new strain of bird flu has jumped to humans with potential for high public health impact as a man in Mexico, 59 years of age, tests positive before dying from it. It's coming, guys. WHO director, World Health Organization director Tedros, it's time to be more aggressive in pushing back on anti-vaxxers. Oh, life is just going to be one hell of a fun ride. During a talk titled Celebrating 50 Years of Immunization Progress, Tedros said, "You know the serious challenge that's posed by anti-vaxxers? And I think we need to strategize to really push back. I think it's time to be more aggressive in pushing back on anti-vaxxers. I think they used COVID as an opportunity, and you know all the havoc they are creating, those anti-vaxxers. You know the havoc we're all creating. And people will believe this. That's the sorry fact. So World Health Organization and Tedros completely disregard overwhelming evidence that experimental, right, have caused a whole lot of deaths and injuries and the very dramatic recent pronouncement from a former Japanese government minister apologizing for those deaths. COVID vaccines may have helped fuel rise in... You know, I see a lot of people posting on YouTube what they would not have been able to post on a little while ago. I've been hit so many times. I had Never Lose Truth taken down. Then 2 years later, or 3 years later, suddenly it appears out of nowhere. But look at this, the Telegraph. COVID vaccines may have helped fuel rise in this. Okay. So, I'm still a little hesitant, but stress literally eats away at your brain's cognitive reserves. Did we need a study for that? Maybe. But I don't know how people can reduce their stress, considering the circumstances that I would say the majority of people, the majority of Americans face now are very stressful. And chronic stress leads to an awful lot of medical issues, an awful lot of emotional issues, an awful lot of mental issues, cognitive issues, and we're just going to be seeing a real big rise. And a fight between migrant squatters and fed-up building residents sparked fatal New York City double homicide. But keep them coming in. Oh, Carol, don't you know that Biden, he signed an executive order to shut down the border? It's a real danger to have people who just can't think anymore, or people who don't want to. They love living idiocracy. A Bronx shooting that left 2 people dead erupted from a heated dispute between migrant squatters and fed-up legal residents of the apartment building, with the migrant suspect now on the run. Ruben Silva, Ruben Silver, 21 years old, who already had a lengthy rap sheet. So if he had a lengthy rap sheet and he was an illegal migrant, why was he still in the United States? Isn't that a good question? The new arrivals, this is what a resident said. So basically what you have now is the older residents from the building that have lived there for some time. They came to her aid, one of the residents that got injured. The new arrivals, they run into the building, they come back with their crew that is armed with bats, knives, and all sorts of weapons. One tenant, Everett Slade, got into fisticuffs, into a fight with the migrant, who got the worst of the exchange, which is when Silver pulled out a gun, opened fire. Slade was shot in the arm. Another man was shot in the chest and mortally wounded. Silver then fled the scene and now is a subject of a manhunt. What the hell? This is what we do here. I mean, I do think law enforcement sources said Silva, who had been busted a half dozen times this year on robbery, theft, and gun charges, is also a person of interest in a series of migrant moped charges. What the hell? Americans, man. I don't. I don't get this apathetic, I mean, all Americans should unite just on this one issue. And they don't. So, lots more. Number of problem banks climbs in first quarter. 63 problem banks. First quarter. All right. They're going to start toppling like dominoes. So, if you have all of your money in one bank, still, at this point, you really need to take a look at what you're doing. A whole lot of people have put their money in credit unions, which are not 100% safe. They're definitely safer, but when the banks go down, the credit unions will follow. You should have just enough money in the bank to pay your bills. Vast majority of small business owners worried Biden's economy will force them to close. And you will be closing. Home buyers are starting to revolt over steep prices across the United States. Where is the revolution? Because I haven't seen it. U.S. housing market, long crippled by an inventory drought, is finally starting to see listings rise. But now, in many places, the buyers just aren't showing up because people don't have money. Water company installs locked shields over fire hydrants in South LA to prevent theft. So now they're stealing fire hydrants. Anything that you can put your hand on, steal it. Report shows continued Midwest manufacturing slump. No joke. As John Deere plans to shift production line to Mexico. 640 employees. You lost your job. 650, sorry. Central and Eastern Iowa. Very attractive jobs. Those are jobs you don't want to lose. Those jobs likely won't come back. Manufacturing companies below growth neutral for the past 3 out of 4 months. Manufacturing is weak and getting a bit weaker. It's not a recession yet. A whole lot have been saying we're in recession, and others say we've got a depression going on. But listen to the horseshit that you get from government officials and mainstream media. Farmers have cut back significantly on their purchases of agricultural equipment, which is what John Deere manufactures. And I do have another article about Biden shipping more jobs, manufacturing, over to China. 1 of every 5 New York City hotels is now a migrant shelter. And that's really going to help the economy in New York. An estimated 26% of Fort Worth's single-family homes are owned by companies, investment firms. Investment firms. All these people are being ripped out of their homes because of investment firms. Now, can states do something about that? Absolutely. Will they? No. State legislators.
Get a letter that says you're being evicted. You're no longer allowed in your own home.
Expiration of lease and notice to vacate. The park owner saying in the letter either leave or sell your home.
This story is not an isolated one. This has been happening to many Americans across the United States. It's been going on for years, and it only has been increasing almost to a fever pitch over the last year. Many of the news clips that you're going to see in this video today are just from the last 6 months. Today, we're going to find out why many Americans are being forced to abandon their homes. And I'm going to be showing you some states that actually have protections for people that live in manufactured home parks so this doesn't happen to them. And of course, we're going to be talking about what can be done today to help these people so they don't become homeless. Whether you live in a manufactured home or not, this is one of those things that us as a community can work together to help everyone.
A mobile home park sold its land, then ordered families who bought homes to move out in 6 months or less.
I have to tell you, that was probably one of the nicest timelines I've heard when it comes to people being evicted from their mobile home park. That does give them a good space of time. 6 months is pretty good. Most of them are giving them only like 30 to 90 days. Which makes the timeline too short for somebody to find somewhere else to live, especially with the affordability crisis here going on in the United States. If you haven't guessed yet who's the landlord and who's actually kicking them out, well, one of the biggest group of people that are buying up houses, you guessed it, is private equity.
The Independent Lincoln Institute estimates that about 1/5 of manufactured housing communities across the country have been purchased by investors in the previous 8 years.
Just like anything that involves private equity, they find the best way they can squeeze out as much money as possible. And whoever gets left in the dust, it doesn't matter as long as they can report back to their shareholders that they're making more money for them. Just like our healthcare system, just like nursing homes, and just like our HOAs, you know as well as I do, private equity has done nothing but make things worse. And
ain't that the truth? So here we go. I'll put the link in to the video and you can listen to the full video. Beware of title pirates, Central Texas landowners. They're having their land sold out from under them. They own it, and then they find out it's sold.
We're talking about what some call title pirates, and this kind of fraud has been increasingly more common in the post-COVID era. An FBI office even put out a notice about it just last week.
I got contacted by a gentleman saying, hey, I found you on Zillow. I would love to sell my lot.
A typical scenario for realtor Manny Arce. He got to work. The seller, who said his name was Joseph Grasso, wanted to move fast. They communicated via email, phone call, and text.
I told my coordinator, I was like, hey, don't put this property on the market because there's something that doesn't feel right. I need to meet this guy. And he refuses to meet with me.
He decided to conduct a drive-by, finding the property owner's address in his tax records.
I went with the intention of like, I'm going to show up to his house and he's going to be like, oh man, Manny, thank you. You're so awesome. You showed up. I'm excited to sell this lot. Or I'm going to get a, who are you? And what are you doing at my house? And sure enough, I showed up. His wife opened the door and I was like, hey, I'm looking for Joe Grasso. And she's like, that's my husband, and who are you?
I was shocked.
This is the real Joe Grasso.
Forging our signatures, my brother and myself, and somebody was trying to sell our land near Stagecoach Ranch over there by Hamilton's Pool. Beautiful piece of property.
Arce says a fraudulent seller can come up with fake forms of ID and use a mobile notary to meet with the title company, which will then pass on the title.
There's a lot of information there that made it sound like, or made it seem like it was me.
It may even take a while for a property owner to realize their land has been sold if the sale goes through.
All right, so I'm going to put the link in for anyone who has land, maybe in another state or maybe a distance away, and it's just sitting there. You might want to keep tabs on it. It's kind of like, you know, the squatters, right? So you have a house, a second home somewhere. Sorry, little one, didn't mean it. I didn't mean it, don't yell at me. I just kicked his paw. So if you have a vacant second home somewhere, that you really need to be paying attention to that as well. because squatters may show up. Florida sheriff explains how to spot hidden cameras indoors. So people now are finding hidden cameras inside their house.
All new at 5, it seems that hidden cameras are popping up everywhere these days, and that includes phone chargers, outlets, even behind mirrors.
Yeah, but there are some ways you can detect them and shut down anyone who may be trying to spy on you. Fox 35's Randy Hildreth is joining us live tonight in Osceola County. So, Randy, what do we have to do exactly?
Hey, good evening to you both. So here's the thing, the hidden cameras are hard to find because obviously the goal is to make sure that those cameras are hidden from plain sight. So we spoke with the sheriff today. As you mentioned, he talked about hidden cameras in phone chargers, also in power strips that go into walls where you plug in items. He says the first thing that you should do when you enter a new space, one, know how hidden cameras can be disguised, and then also take an assessment of the placement of items in that room.
Perverts and sick people are going to be creative and try to find a way to invade your privacy.
If you see a two-way mirror that's very light, very easy to remove off the wall, you could always look and inspect those.
Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez says that creativity is the most concerning part. Just this month, a man was accused of using a cell phone charger to spy on his stepdaughter for years. In the arrest report, the stepdaughter told investigators Jose Morales Chirina gave her the charging dock as a gift. She says she recently found a live stream video of her room on Morales Chirina's phone. She says she tracked that view to the charger and allegedly found the camera inside.
There's so many different things you can buy on the internet.
Morales Chirina faced a judge this month on charges of video voyeurism, which is a felony.
With the technology getting a little better, increasing, and these things being more accessible is what's having people do these things.
Although this alleged crime happened at a home, Sheriff Lopez says he's seen cases like this involving rental properties and hotels in touristy areas. So how do you protect yourself? First, know what the cameras may be disguised as.
A picture that you can actually buy online. It has a hidden camera in the nose or somewhere in here, and it's aimed directly or positioned strategically over your bed. Alarm clocks. Sometimes they have a little camera there. Or the smoke detectors. Those are very common.
Next, he says, do an assessment of the room. Is there double of something that just doesn't make sense?
A small room like this, you see 2 smoke detectors, that might be an indicator that one of them might be fake.
Also, consider the placement of objects.
The things that are just out of the normal, or things that are really positioned, angled in your shower, or angled at your bed, or angled at a toilet.
Lastly, he says if you are ever in doubt, don't touch it and call law enforcement.
Better be safe than sorry.
What a world we're living in. So now you have to check out any presents that are given to you by anybody outside of your home. Now you got to make sure that there's no hidden camera in it. Nationwide issue affecting cell service between AT&T and Verizon. It's resolved, but I found this out after the live last night, and apparently interoperability issue between carriers has been resolved, but a whole lot of people could not call. If you had AT&T, you couldn't call someone with Verizon, vice versa. Isn't that interesting? And, you know, there are so many things going on now where Americans are either irritated with other Americans, fighting with other Americans, and even tipping frustration, reaching the boiling point. And I have to tell you, you know, it definitely kind of reached my boiling point where I just ignore, you know, the tip jars, and depending on if it's a real small place and I feel like it's not doing well, you know, if I go in for a cup of coffee and then there's a tip jar that, you know, I'll throw the change in or whatever. But there's almost like an aggressiveness now with people wanting tips. I've shown videos, actually, of delivery people who demand, more money when they actually received a nice tip. We ain't right. Landfill empire. I'm going to play this. It's only 3 minutes, and this is what we're living.
Landfill empire. The moonlight caresses the missile silos in Russia and the blown-out hospitals in Gaza. The garbage plays in the wind like children. The exhaust fumes and the sounds of traffic feel like sex in your senses. You can meet the divine here in the city, here in dystopia, here amid the smell of piss and the sleeping bags on the sidewalk, here in the heart of a dying empire whose cancerous tendrils sprawl like ivy across the dying face of a dying world. You can let the LED lights dance with the light at the core of your being. You can drink from the great mother's breasts beneath a billboard for the latest eye thingy. You can raise up your heart to the pigeons and to all the other animal species whose lives we have not yet succeeded in extinguishing. For us, this is Eden. For us, this is the only place in which Buddha can be born. In the future, if there is a future, maybe the humans figure things out and create a healthy world. But that world is not our world. That world is not where we clocked in to do our daily work. We clocked in to this strange civilization, where headless robot dogs keep showing up in police forces, and sniper drones play the sounds of crying babies to lure out Palestinian civilians. Where we have amputated our sacred connection with nature and land, and affixed a prosthesis made of viral videos and sitcoms to the aching, festering stump. Where everyone's eyes are darkened by unnatural mindings, and everyone's always hungry no matter how much they eat. This is where we will make our stand. This tangled wire nest full of fast food wrappers and broken toys. This mess where everything smells like motor oil and despair. This is the manger in which Christ's consciousness will be lain. This is the Armageddon town that will become our paradise. This is the landfill empire where we will finally let sprout those mysterious seeds planted in us long ago. In this strange civilization, in their own secret language, even the buzzing drones over Gaza sing the holy name of Allah.
Well, I don't think that I will live to see the human race manifest anything healthy. I'm afraid those days are gone. Talk about unhealthy. Okay, Colorado Republicans issue call to burn all pride flags. You see how the red team is just like the blue team. Keep the division going. The whole party, Republican Party in Colorado, burn those flags. Nothing good is coming, unfortunately. As drag events face threats, Philly sets record for most attended storyline. Yay, Philly, you go! Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, had the largest ever drag story event. God, help us. This video exposing an LGBTQ club in an elementary school in Melbourne.
In today's edition of Melbourne Doing Melbourne Things, we have a school in Montmorency that has its own queer club, a primary school, for years 3 to 6. It was signed off by the school's dual principals, and it's facilitated by this lady here, Trish Patsy Munro. This is her Facebook page, and this is her Instagram, which looks exactly like I thought it would. But she also has a teaching page. Primary school. Look at this. We got the pronouns in the bio. We got the rainbow lanyard, the rainbow. Oh, it's just so primary school. Let me make something real clear, Trishy. There is no place for an LGBT club in any school, let alone a primary school. Also, just have a go at a lanyard. But yeah, keep telling yourself it's only happening in America. In today's edition of Melbourne Doing...
That last line. Keep telling yourself it's only happening in America. It's where it started. It's where it blossomed. It's where it exploded. TikToker claims a naked man came up to his 2-year-old kid and exposed himself. He called the cops, who said it's not a crime. Oregon. I will post the link. I can't play the video because Twitter won't let me play the video. It just circles. BMW admits not changing logo to LGBTQ colors in Middle East due to cultural aspects, but not here in America. Look at all of these corporations going LGBTQ. Oh, wow. How colorful. How wonderful. How deliberate. How intentional. How social engineering is it? Right smack in your face. But in the Middle East, BMW, no rainbow. Cisco, no rainbow. Lenovo, no rainbow. And Bethesda, no rainbow. Respecting their culture. We all get a slap in the face. Chicago suburb shuts down annual carnival due to teen chaos. All right, what I have been noticing, a lot of gangs, a lot of organized gangs, a lot of teens, a lot of crime, a lot of people losing their mind, resorting to a real violence, picking up guns over nothing, shooting people, and this, in my estimation, from my observing what has been going on pretty closely, as much as I could possibly take in, this is escalating to a point that it's, yeah, the summer heat. Just wait. It's gonna get bad.
Yeah, that's right, Dawn. The mayor of Posen today says that this is all about safety. And as a result, the Park District says they will no longer hold their annual carnival as a result of what took place here over the weekend.
To that end, I move that the Posen Park District no longer hosts an annual carnival moving forward. Do I have a second?
I second it. Just like that, Posen's Park District voting unanimously to cease its annual carnival. Here's just a glimpse of the chaos with multiple police agencies responding.
It was just a flash mob, if you will, that decided to come and create all this chaos in That's what happened.
The 4-day event was held here at Commissioners Park along West 148th Street. More than 2,000 attendees. Police say teens not from the area came and took over the event. There were fights coupled with teens running through the streets. Susan Adema lives nearby.
It's the best thing to do for our own safety. I live around the corner, and I did not like seeing this unrest. It reminded me of when they broke into the gas station during that civil unrest with whatever situation that happened a few years back.
At least 4 people were arrested, including 2 teens and 2 adults. The police.
So, what do we have going here? They actually can create this with electromagnetic frequencies. They can create this kind of crazy mob violence with electromagnetic frequencies. They can pay a mob to create an awful lot of this violence with these teens. We do know that parenting, on the whole, really sucks in our country. But they also control us via crime. So they let loose the crime, and then there's solutions. And those solutions become more and more restrictive of our own events that bring joy, of our freedom. But I feel so safe now. The Brits invade. Oh my God, the British are coming. The British are coming. They invade U.S. newsrooms with a killer instinct and fleet street ethics, and the crisis in American news media has led to an unexpected result in a very short time: the invasion of executive news suites by British editors who experts say bring a killer instinct to news gathering. Oh, while notably downgrading the diversity. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll post the link to this if you want to read it, but it's the digital. They talk about how digital news, there are no boundaries anymore. There are no countries anymore. Oh, it sounds to me like a new world order. Behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping. Really? Behind closed doors, he's kind of on stage showing the world he's slipping. Biden met with congressional leaders in the West Wing in January to negotiate a Ukraine funding deal. He spoke so softly at times that some participants struggled to hear him. According to 5 people familiar with the meeting, he read from notes to make obvious points, paused for extended periods, and sometimes closed his eyes for so long that some in the room wondered whether he had tuned out. All right. If you feel like reading this, go ahead. I'll put the link in. But it's pretty obvious, and it's been obvious for a very, 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 very long time, like years, that something is wrong with Biden. So, that he's still the president, that suggests there's something wrong with the American people. No internet? What happened? This I might wait for another day. German lawmaker urges activation of 900,000 reservists over Russian threat to Europe. We've got a lot going on. A lot of warmongering, a lot of crazy talk. And it's not just Israel, but it's also this Ukraine, Russia. Okay. United Kingdom's military leadership has been vocal of late about raising up a citizen army. So has a whole lot of European countries. But let's go here. The reckless brinkmanship with Russia just keeps on escalating. It's damn near impossible to keep up with all of the warmongering of the Western Empire these days. In response to the frightening steps that NATO has been taking to allow Western-supplied weapons to be used by Ukraine to strike Russian territory, Putin warned last week that these escalations can lead to serious consequences. This constant escalation can lead to serious consequences, Putin said. If these serious consequences occur in Europe, how will the U.S. behave? Bearing in mind our parity in the field of strategic weapons, hard to say. Do they want global conflict? Of course the United States wants that. We can get a more concrete idea of what Putin was talking about from the blatant threat Moscow formally made to the UK last month, saying that Ukraine using any British weapons to attack Russian territory could result in direct Russian attacks on British military targets in Ukraine and beyond, which would place Russia in a profoundly dangerous state of hot warfare with NATO forces. Crazy. Westerners are flippin' violently crazy. Stoltenberg dismissed Putin's warnings, saying, "This is nothing new. It has been the case for a long time that every time NATO allies are providing support to Ukraine, Putin is trying to threaten us to not do that." Cavalier attitude toward nuclear brinkmanship that empire managers have been demonstrating lately was addressed on Monday by the Russian deputy foreign minister, who said the U.S. is close to making a fatal miscalculation. He said, "I would like to caution American officials against miscalculations, which may have fatal consequences. For some unknown reason, they underestimate the seriousness of the rebuff they may receive." And he went on, "I am urging these officials, who seemingly are not bothered by anything, to take some time away from playing computer games," which is apparently what they're doing given their lighthearted approach to serious issues, and take a closer look at what Putin said. So, a whole lot of people, I'm sure, are just unfazed by it. But think about all of the different scenarios that could take place, right? A whole lot of people are saying or questioning whether or not we're going to have an election. That means something big is going to be happening before November. And it doesn't matter if Putin is also a puppet just playing his role. Who gets affected by all of this? It's not Putin. It's not Biden. It's not Trump. We do. We do. And considering how many leaders are ignoring the United States and going against the United States now, considering how many people, don't like America, could we see war on our shores? Of course we could. A whole lot of world leaders are talking about how America, the United States, is the country that's causing all of the chaos all over the world, that never abides to international law, that does whatever the hell it wants. So, you need to take this very seriously. Elections don't matter. It's not about that. It's about something happening big prior to the election. We're not talking about whether they matter or not. I'm going to play some of Godfrey Bloom. This was sent to me by a subscriber in Scotland. Do you want World War III? More bloodshed and death? It's kicking off.
It seems that my video this morning, there's one or two little bits to add, that already we've had another 2 or 3 missile strikes, NATO missile strikes, across into the Russian Federation. And the Americans are now talking out loud, as it were, about boots on the ground in the Ukraine. Boots on the ground. Went well in Vietnam, didn't it? And Iraq and Afghanistan, but there we are. What can you do with the industrial military complex? But the question you've got to ask yourself and your family, do you want World War III for the Ukraine? Do you think it's worth it? I don't. Watch the clip and make up your own mind. Well, greetings to you. I return, sadly, again after a layoff of nearly a year, to the conflict between the Russian Federation and NATO. I did write in 2016 for Going Postal magazine that no good would come of our involvement with the Ukraine. It's corrupt. It's a NATO Washington neocon puppet. And if you wrestle with a chimney sweep, you're going to get soot all over you. And that's exactly what's happened. But I've avoided it and I've left it because there isn't much point. Although I have on my website explained the Russian point of view. But now the Russian point of view has been reinforced in spades. The Russians feel the same way as in the 1960s, which I remember because I'm an old geezer now. The Americans felt that they couldn't have the Soviet Union's missiles in Cuba. It was just too close and it was in their backyard. And the story now is history. We know that the Soviets gave way and removed their missiles. It's not quite as simple as that, incidentally, but broadly speaking, that'll do for now. Now, the Russian Federation feel the same way about having NATO in their backyard. They have 1,000 kilometers of border with Ukraine. And they made it extremely clear to Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, and everybody else who wanted to listen, to say, we will not accept hostile soldiers or missiles or anything else on this border. It's too close. It's only 800 miles from Moscow, and we're just not going to do it. So be warned. And Liz Truss, you remember Liz Truss? She was the Foreign Secretary. She went over to talk to Putin just over 3 years ago and came back. And Putin said then, and you can find the quote, it's easy enough to find, she just wasn't listening. She just wasn't listening. And NATO and the West have not been listening ever since. Now, I was in favor of the peace plan that came about in March, April 2022. I thought this is as good as it's going to get. This is a get-out clause for everyone. It's going to save a lot of lives. The Ukrainians signed it. The Russian Federation signed it. It was virtually done and dusted in April 2022 when Boris Johnson went out and scuppered it. He said, don't worry, leave it. No, we're going to give you everything you need to beat the Russians by proxy. And this is what happened all those months ago and lives ago. Since that time, there have been estimated somewhere in the region of 300,000 more young Ukrainian dead, probably another 25,000 Russian young men dead, when the peace deal was on the table. I don't know how Boris Johnson sleeps at night. Probably cuddles up to a check he got from the neocons in Washington. I don't know what the game is, why he would have stopped that. It's madness, but it's continuing. Now, the reason I've come back to this, because it's not now all unfolding just as I said it would, with the Russians creeping forward and forward and forward, and they will take over Odessa and all the cities which are basically Russian-speaking and ethnic Russian. That is what they're going to do. They don't want the Western Ukraine. They don't want to govern the Western Ukraine because who would want to? It's a cesspit. It's a shithole. So this...
All right, I'm going to put the link in. It's a very interesting 12-minute video where, we are World War III has started. Wait until the official declaration of World War III, when all of us feel it. It's going to be very, very different from, and I've said that before, World War III has already begun. The official World War III, that's when we will really feel the true weight of it. The Ukraine, these people do not care who dies. Okay. Ukraine officers say recruits arrive at front lines pathetically undertrained. Pathetically undertrained to face fighting with Russian military. Combat commanders say newly mobilized soldiers are arriving at the front lines so poorly trained and clueless that they can't even disassemble their weapons. One soldier described his basic training as complete nonsense. Everything is learned on the spot at the front lines. An officer who trained recruits said their rifle training was limited to just 20 rounds per soldier. U.S. Army training is 600 rounds. And they're literally like dragging men off the street. So, one of the commanders said, "We are just wasting a lot of time here on basic training. If, God forbid, there will be a breakthrough near Chesev Yar, and we get new infantry that doesn't know basic things, they will be sent there just to die." Word of the poor preparation has gotten around and is hampering recruit efforts and fueling draft resistance. New advertising assures would-be enlistees that they'll receive 60 days of preparation before facing off with the Russian army.
Полицию! Не, люди, не калечьте человека! Кто-то ж мобилизован! Да он уже! Документ! Где он? Мобилизован! Пацаны, ну что вы делаете в натуре? Ну что вы делаете? Успокойтесь, отпустите. Он уже... Так решите вопрос нормально. Уже приказ! Ну что вы делаете? Сейчас, покажите! Покажите приказ! Покажите! Ну что, меня плохими. Тогда освободите его! Что вы делаете? Приказ конкретно. Покажите! Покажи сначала, а не запихивай его в уши. Покажите на полицию! Опустите! Полицию! Отпустите вы меня, я не вру! Ну покажи! Покажите! Не вопрос, да покажи! Покажи сейчас ориентировку на этого человека! Я же покажи!
Now that takes conscription to a whole new level, At least 11 people wounded by Hezbollah attack. Hezbollah, Syria, Gaza, West Bank. It's not good for the Israelis at all. Netanyahu says Israel prepared for a very intense operation on Lebanon border. So they're claiming that Lebanon has set fire to areas of the West Bank. But I actually saw Twitter feed where it was the IDF and the West Bankers setting fire to Palestinian land. Don't know what the true nature of that violence is. So, but these are just articles that last minute articles. Americans with adjustable mortgages could soon see their payments skyrocket. Microsoft AI screenshots everything you do on your computer. And privacy experts are concerned. You really are concerned? Oh. Screenshots of a user's activity every 5 seconds. Oh. They know us well. Debt collector data breach exposes data on 3 million Americans. We have data breaches going on all the time, exposing a whole lot of private information about Americans. This group of Minnesota Somalian refugees outsmarted the U.S. and rigged their food aid scam trial like seasoned pros. They apparently you probably haven't heard about the massive food aid scam story coming out of Minnesota. Why would you? It doesn't fit the media's left-wing narrative about how all refugees are budding doctors and physicists. This story involves a group of so-called poor, wayward Somali refugees who duped America and stole upwards of $240 million from hard-working U.S. taxpayers over the years. No, it's a fraud scheme that exploited a federally funded child nutrition program during the COVID pandemic. Well, no different than a lot of Americans. All right, unemployment reached critical mass. Recession is here. Depression is here. And I'm just going to play a few minutes of this. I will link below. You can listen to the full video if you so choose. And here we go.
Session April 24th.
Not to ruin the video for you, but the numbers that come out of the U.S. government, it's a lie. Oh, right. You guys know it.
1 week ago. That's very specific. What happened?
So you're quoting you're quoting a report that came out a few weeks ago, and the reason that I cited April 24th is that is when we learned that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, instead of north of 500,000 jobs created in the third quarter of 2023, which ended September the 30th, we now know that the economy lost 200,000 jobs instead. So a major swing. A lot of it had to do with this birth-death model that we've been talking about for some time, and the dangers of imputing job creation. That word imputation means modeling it. But the dangers of imputing job creation when you have the bankruptcy cycle picking up as quickly as it has. And lo and behold, when they got the final data directly from employers, they found out again, there wasn't any 540,000 jobs created in the 3 months ended September the 30th, 2023. Instead, 200,000 jobs were lost. So people no longer call me that crazy lady who said recession started in October 2023. Now, at least the data back up what I'm saying. So it's nice. It's nice to be released from the insane asylum, David.
Oh, well, you should walk around with the data on your forehead next time you're at the airport. Okay, Danielle, you also said that the data here is a little more comprehensive than the non-farm payrolls data. Can you elaborate on that?
So again, the birth-death model is just one of the components that goes into the numbers that are reported every non-farm payroll Friday. Well, that once a month, it's like the Super Bowl for investors. That is based on a survey of 700,000 participants. And again, what we get out of that is sometimes the first blush take, you only get like a 40%, 39%, 38% response rate to that survey. So your source, your pool is even smaller. What the BLS reported actually comes from the Census Bureau. And once a quarter, the Census Bureau legally requires every employer in America, so call it north of 1.6 million employers, to report what their headcounts are. So not what you think they are, but what they are. So this is just hard data that flows into the Department of Labor from the Census Bureau and tells you how many Americans are employed. You compare that against the survey and you get the truth. They report the revision. And thank God I talk so loud, because at least I get the word out. Otherwise, it's not as if you've got a reporter on the White House lawn saying, gee, economy went into recession in the third quarter. That ain't going to happen either.
Well, speaking of the non-farm payrolls data, April's number came in really weak, well, much weaker than March. Perhaps this is just a monthly variation, or are we seeing a larger trend here? I mean, April was 175,000 jobs added. March's number was 315,000. That's a pretty big, difference.
Yeah, it's a pretty big jump. And again, we've seen these revisions continue to take down initially reported data month after month after month, really without a pause. More interestingly than the 175,000 jobs that still got a plus sign in front of it, you had the unemployment rate unexpectedly move up from 3.8% to 3.9%. And, David, why could this be the beginning of a trend as opposed to kind of a one-off, an aberration, if you will? Well, what we've seen just this year, now we've got Red Lobster. We can add that to the list of casualties. But what we've seen this year is quite a few liquidations. So it's not that companies are announcing that they're going to be restructuring and come out at the other end. That's your best case scenario, as was the case with Jo-Ann Fabrics, right? Not all the stores were closed. A lot of the jobs were saved. That's not been the case with Rue 21 or 99-cent only stores or so many others that have shuttered in 2024. And what does that mean? It means that once you close, you got 60 to 90 days before these people show up in initial unemployment claims, and they're showing up in the jobless rates. And that's why we know that this is gaining traction, such that April was not a one-off.
Before we continue,
we are being lied to on a massive scale, about virtually everything. And there is going to be hell to pay for an awful lot of people who haven't paid in yet. Believing, never holding people accountable for their lies, believing the lies, and then you have conflict between people. Those who don't believe the lies, those who do believe the lies, and we are off and running. Merchant ship off Saudi coast reports significant explosion a short distance from port side, southern Red Sea. I saw a video that was sent to me by a subscriber that was not verified, so this could be the same ship, but they were saying it was the USS Eisenhower, and if that's the case, then that could, bear very dire repercussions. But they're only saying UK Maritime Trade Operations reports a commercial vessel experienced a significant explosion short distance from the port side of the vessel. The incident occurred 50 nautical miles southwest of Saudi Arabia, this place in Saudi Arabia in the southern Red Sea. We've got an awful lot going on. but we have more genocide taking place in other places outside of what's going on in Israel and Gaza and West Bank and Sudan. And it's not good. Not good. Did I set it up right? Let's see.
Was created by the UN that had no peacekeeping or protection of civilian mandate. It was only a political negotiations mission, but that
I didn't. I'm just going to post the link because we're getting close to the end. Is the United States involved in this? Yes. Yes. China publicly states that America is the biggest source of world chaos. I don't think that that is deniable.
This 事实证明，美国才是国际秩序的最大烂源，全球治理进程的最大绊脚石，地区和平稳定的最大挑战。对美方双标来说，规则秩序是霸权话术，合着用，不合则弃，用来管别人，从不管自己，一贯是唯我独尊，我行我素。从阿富汗到伊拉克，从乌克兰到加沙，都是美方利己双标制造的危机冲突。事实证明，美国
It's not. You can't deny it. Not that other, like Russia and China, that they use soft power. We use violent power. And I'm going to play some of this. This is really pretty disgusting. Bill Maher is, he's, wow. I don't have any words for what he says here.
On your radar, Brianna?
Well, Robbie, Bill Maher's caught some flack for a new segment in which he makes the are inherently violent, barbaric, and savage. Just last week, Obama complimented Biden's ceasefire speech using language that eerily...
That jumped. Sorry. I didn't expect it to jump that way.
Brianna?
Well, Robbie, Bill Maher's caught some flack for a new segment in which he makes the case for Israeli superiority. Let's take a listen.
Because values and customs make a difference, okay? And the people of Gaza, by the way, if the Israelis did get rid of Hamas, they'd be doing a giant favor to the people of Gaza who hate Hamas too. But let's just go through the lists. Because the Israelis look like us in most ways, values-wise. Maybe we're not doing it the right way. I don't know. Religious tolerance. That doesn't exist in Gaza. You're either Muslim or an infidel, and you better be a Muslim. Female freedom. Free and fair elections. Free speech. Gay rights. Can I just finish my list of pedophilia? I'll put that under don't ask. Child brides and so forth. Equality of the sexes. I'll categorize that under don't make me fucking laugh. The fact that you know these people think that this is where they should be aligned with, that these are the values that you support.
Now, if someone complained that Jews didn't share our values and customs, that they didn't look like us, that, say, calling themselves chosen people was evidence of religious intolerance, if someone accused Jews broadly of pedophilia or sexual deviance, citing Weinstein, Epstein, and, let's say, Seinfeld, and argued that as a result they didn't want to live in a country with Jews, I doubt we would struggle to identify those remarks for what they are: bigotry, anti-Semitism. Now, Maher's commitment to Islamophobia is nothing new, nor is it subtle. He has argued that Syrian refugees should be rejected because, quote, their cultures are not like ours, an argument eerily reminiscent of a justification used to deny Jews asylum as they faced persecution by Nazi Germany. He's argued that Islam, the religion that shares more with Judaism than any other religion, is, quote, the motherlode of bad ideas. He's described Muslims collectively as threatening and joked that Muslims, who comprise 25% of all human beings on earth, that they belong to a, quote, culture in its medieval era. He accused Muslims of, quote, bringing that desert stuff to our world and referred to Muslims as uncivilized. When challenged as to whether Islam is a religion of peace, Maher once quipped, yeah, they blow you up. There's a piece of you over there. There's a piece of you over there. There's a piece of you over there. There's something deeply ironic about Maher's claims, especially made just about a week after we all watched a Palestinian man hold a baby aloft with a crucial piece missing. It had been decapitated in an Israeli airstrike. For 7 months, we've watched Israel murder well over 35,000 Gazans, 75% of whom were women and children. Yet we've been told that Palestinians are inherently violent, barbaric, and savage. Just last week, Obama complimented Biden's ceasefire speech using language that eerily reflected this double standard. A ceasefire alone, he wrote, won't ease the terrible pain of Israelis whose loved ones were butchered or abducted by Hamas, or the Palestinians whose families have been shattered by the subsequent war. Israelis are butchered by Hamas, in Obama's words. Palestinians are abstractly shattered by war, not by Israel, with American bombs and American diplomatic cover. Bill Maher lauds Israel for religious tolerance, saying that it doesn't exist in Gaza. Meanwhile, you'll rarely hear mention of the fact that, say, interfaith marriage isn't permissible in Israel. It's not allowed in Gaza, but the case being made is not that Gazans deserve rights because of religious tolerance, but it's that they deserve to live because they're human beings. It's a deeply segregated society in Israel where 98% of Jews say all or most of their friends are Jewish and 85% of Muslims say the same. I don't think you'll hear Maher speak up for Palestinian Christians either. Remember, former Congressman Justin Amash lost several relatives when Israel bombed a Christian Orthodox church in Gaza, where people had been sheltering along with sleeping children and babies. 150 to 200 people were killed in that attack by Israel. Israel is a country that imposes segregated roads for Jews and Arabs. This map shows how Palestinians are forced through checkpoints, where they're forced to wait for hours and are subjugated to humiliating treatment. As one Palestinian doctor explained, my family members cross this checkpoint at 4 a.m., then sleep in their car until they start work at 8 a.m. This is apartheid. While Palestinians in Gaza have maintained Jewish graves from World War I, CNN reported that at least 16 Gazan cemeteries have been desecrated by Israeli forces since October 7th. While Biden repeated the beheaded baby lie, he's been silent on the viral image of a Palestinian baby decapitated by Israel during the Memorial Day massacre, or the thousands of Gazan children who live without limbs because of Israeli airstrikes and sniper fire. While Israel made rape accusations, which were quickly used to justify the mass murder of Palestinian civilians, subsequent investigations haven't turned up a single incident of rape on October 7th. Meanwhile, UN experts have reported on gross human rights violations, including sexual assault against Palestinian women and girls in Israeli custody. Maher says Israelis look like us in most ways, values-wise, maybe, but perhaps only because America also fails to live up to its democratic aims. Just last week, The Guardian reported that an Israeli Mossad director personally threatened the UN court's prosecutor to avoid accountability for its crimes against Palestinians, stalking her and threatening her family like a common thug. And while Israel's defenders often claim contradictorily that it's a Jewish state but also a pluralistic democracy where everyone is equal, Israel refuses to allow 5 million Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank to either have their own state and self-determination or, alternatively, to participate in Israeli society as full rights-having voting members of one united state. They brag about Arabs comprising 20% of the Israeli public, but insist that Palestinians are too intrinsically dangerous to live amongst in greater numbers. Well, which is it? If Israel is proof of a democratic, pluralistic dream, why is this so-called equality reserved for some Palestinians, but not for others? I had to confront this warped logic about a month ago when I participated in a debate on whether Israel's siege on Gaza is a just war. Shortly after, the existence of Arabs in Israel was cited at that debate as evidence of Israel's inclusivity and its validity as a democratic ally. A pro-Zionist panelist argued that Palestinians living in the occupied territories should not have the right to return to their homeland in what is now called Israel because they're unsuitable neighbors, unlike, say, people from Denmark.
There are 2 million Arabs that live in Israel. There are 0 Jews that live in Gaza, right? It's a relevant data point. Zionism is about this creation of the state of Israel, which was created. Are you a Zionist or are you an anti-Zionist? What I'm trying to figure out is if my opponents here believe that the state of Israel should exist at all, and if we should wipe a UN member nation off the map, because that is effectively what right of return is. The right of return is not take 7 million refugees, and this number expands. These are people who have never been in the area, have resettled other places. And you know, Benny Morris's book is far more nuanced than that is allowing, that there were people who were expelled, there were people that were forced out by their own side, etc. Benny Morris has actually said this, I mean, you quoted him, so let me go to him, that if you do have right of return, which by the way, 7 million people doesn't mean 7 million people that go to the West Bank and Gaza. Very specifically doesn't mean that. It goes to what Israel is now. In what Morris said, and I think it was an article in Tablet, he said, you know, the response to this is if you think October 7th is bad, this is going to be a giant bloodletting. This is not as if 7 million Danes are coming in. These are people who have an ideological predisposition.
You might be asking yourself why one would presume there'd be a bloodletting if Palestinians have the right of return, especially given that, as he mentioned, 20% of Israel is currently composed of Palestinians. Again, this is supposed to be evidence of how democratic and inclusive Israel is. That panelist, Michael Monahan, seems to imply there's something specific to Danish people that qualifies them as neighbors over Palestinians, or perhaps something intrinsic to Palestinians or Arabs as a people that disqualifies them. What is it about the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians that would make the former feel unsafe? Well, one big difference I can think of is that Zionist Jewish settlers never committed ethnic cleansing against Danish people. They never slaughtered 15,000 Danes while expelling another 75,000 from their land. But you can imagine the counterfactual if Michael Monahan had immigrated from New York to live in a Danish man's house while the original occupant was forced to live in an open-air prison where his calories were meted out by a government run by immigrants from Eastern Europe and the United States. I suspect it would put a bit of a damper on the jolly relationship he seems to enjoy with the people of Denmark. In short, Palestinian resistance is about reclaiming what they have been denied, the right of return, achieving self-determination. But once you admit that, you have to acknowledge that the obvious answer to how to achieve peace involves allowing Palestinians to return to their land and live as co-equal citizens in historic Palestine if they so choose, even if that means the end of Israel's existence as a Jewish majority ethno-state. Political scientist John Mearsheimer, who gained new prominence as an early critic of America's Ukraine strategy and who wrote a seminal book on the Israel lobby, made exactly this argument when asked whether he believed Hamas was motivated by anti-Semitism or by some intrinsic quality to Arabs or Muslims.
When you have a disaster, and what happened on October 7th is a disaster, one of the first things that happens is that people begin to ask the question, how did this happen? Right? What's the root cause of this problem? This is a disaster. We have to understand what caused it so that we can work to make sure it doesn't happen again. So we can work to shut it down and then make sure it doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. But once you start talking about the root causes, right, you end up talking about how Israel was created, right? And that means telling a story that is not pretty about how the Zionists conquered Palestine. And number two, it means talking about the occupation. Right. It's not like Hamas attacked on October 7th because there were just a bunch of anti-Semites who hated Jews and wanted to kill Jews. This is not, Nazi Germany, right? This is directly related to the occupation and to what was going on inside of Gaza. And it's not in Israel's interest or the lobby's interest to have an open discourse about what the Israelis have been doing to the Palestinians since, I would say, roughly 1903, when the second Aliyah came to Israel, or came to what was then Palestine, right? We want to talk about that.
The lobby doesn't want us to talk about that. But that's exactly...
I will post the link. You can watch the end of it. Yeah, well, I do want to respond to one comment that I saw, which is, my Bible says not to kill or steal or to covet what belongs to another. Jews in Israel aren't following those laws very well. All Jews, or do you mean the Zionist Jews, or are you forgetting also that evangelical Christians are right there doing and supporting, and they're the biggest lobbyist group, but we don't hear much about that. We hear that AIPAC is the biggest lobbyist. No, evangelical Christians are. They kill. They steal. So, but Bill Maher, that list, every Palestinian that I have known throughout my life, never have they demonstrated any of the behaviors that this guy is talking about. In fact, every one. And I was trying to think of a Palestinian woman, I'm sure I've come across, but it was always Palestinian men who had a very gentle, quiet affect in the world. So, yeah, it's, but I guess he's just thinking that all Palestinians are Muslim. No, whole lot of Christian, so. And again, I'm going to say that there are an awful lot of Jews who are out fighting to get a stop to this and to bring down the apartheid state. And 85% of the Jews in Israel are Zionists. Do you know that they censor those who are not? So we don't know really what is the percentage of Jews that are Zionists. Now, I sure know that there's an awful lot who are yay, yay, rah, rah, all of this very evil, just the slaughter that is taking place. But the Jews in Israel that speak out against this, they're being jailed, they're being censored, they're losing their jobs. So just like here in America, a whole lot too scared to speak up now because the totalitarian governments, they crossed the line, we didn't beat them back, and they have taken hold. So on that note, I do hope that you do your best to live your best and live honestly, speak honestly, develop yourself as a trustworthy human being. And thank you for showing up, and I hope to see you tomorrow night. Ciao, guys.